this good, Kirk, or do I need to move over? What do I need to do? Whoops, I throw that on the floor. Can't see it. Okay. You're included. Hey, Kirk, you gonna be here? Okay, so if I switch to audio, I'll probably just reach this and put it down here? Yeah, that works. Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank Corey for the last couple weeks. I asked him to, as we were bridging from his class, which was finishing early, to this one, which I was going to start a little later than because I was going to be gone last week. I asked him to take a look real briefly at the second missionary journey in preparation. Our study is in 1 Corinthians, which Paul visits during his second journey. And so what I wanted to do is kind of give a prelude to where it is. And so that's where he's taken you from the Macedonian to do all those things. This week and next week, we're going to look at lesson 1. Not really going to dig into lesson 1 much today. And lesson 2 next week, 1 and 2. Basically, I'm going to take this week and next week, and what I want to do is to try to set some background information. Most of us have studied 1 Corinthians at least once, and we know it's got all kinds of messed up stuff in it, with things going on that are really wild. But one thing that I've always found, to understand anything, you have to have a little bit of context. Context makes a difference. And as much context in reading and as I've done or whatever, I've done this multiple times in multiple places for study 1 Corinthians. But when I went there, I saw all kinds of things, that light bulbs going off all the time, all over the place. And it makes a difference when you actually start seeing some things. And so what I want to try to do is bring you a little bit of what I saw and try to show some of those key things, because when we get to the letter to these people, you're going to go, I see why that's so significant. And so what I want to do this week and next week is to make sure we have a good understanding of what took place during the journey to Corinth, what he was there and what he dealt with as he left and went from there. So we're going to start with there. In Paul's second missionary journey, I had a pointer. There it is. Start with on. Basically, he gets the Macedonian call right here, which basically means while he's in Troas, he sees a vision from Macedonia, which is northern Greece. Okay? See, they don't see Greece anywhere written here. Well, when we talk about Greece, we're talking about really a bunch of city-states that were put together that the Persians tried to conquer, and eventually they conquered the Persians. Then the Romans conquered them. So the Romans are now in charge at his time, and what you're left with is two major portions of the country, Macedonia, which is the north, and Achaia, which is the south. All right, so he gets a call, what we call the Macedonian call. He sees a vision. And with that vision, we find that he goes up here to Neapolis and then to Philippi. What happens in Philippi? Gets arrested and thrown in jail. Who was the cause of that? Huh? No. Remember, it was a silversmith, and they were idol worshipers. They were the Gentiles. So he gets in trouble, thrown in jail. We know all about Corey's studied that the last couple of weeks, went through that. After that, he went on to Thessalonica. In Thessalonica, they start having riots. Who starts the riots? Now you can say it. The Jews. So here he gets attacked by the Gentiles, here he's attacked by the Jews, and they stir up trouble and trouble and trouble everywhere they go, okay? And so as all this trouble is going on and brewing, he goes to Berea to get away from it, to bring a pause, and it says the Bereans were more noble than the others. Why? Because they listened and studied.
Now, in my defense, the Jews did stir up the Greeks often.
Often. Oh, absolutely. Oh, when we get to Corinth, you're going to see all kinds of stuff, and Athens and everywhere. But anyway, yeah, absolutely. And so here we are in Berea, and they were more noble because they listened and they studied and did that. However, there was an influence just up the street. They said, hey, wait a minute, what's happening over in Berea? And so guess what the Jews from Thessalonica do? They come down to Berea and start stirring up trouble. So we find there that in Acts chapter, let me start with the right chapter, 17. Well, before we do that, let's start with a prayer. Lord, we thank you for the day. We thank you for your word, and we thank you for the opportunity to study it. Open our eyes, help us to understand, help us to apply it. In your son's name, amen. All right, so here we go, and they run him, basically, they don't run him out of town, but they're stirring up troubles. So it says the believers sent Paul to the coast, and Timothy and Silas stayed behind at Berea. And those who escorted Paul brought him, this is where you left off last week, to Athens, and left with instructions to send for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible. Okay, so here he is. He is now left, and he has gone from the north way down to the south to Athens. Doesn't say, this shows it by sea, but it doesn't really say whether he went by land or sea that I remember. But it doesn't really matter because he skips this part of the country, which incidentally is not where your major centers are. Your major centers are right here and right here. So they skip this, go down here, and he comes to Athens, and he's waiting. And while he's waiting, then it takes us to verse 16. In verse, let's see. Okay. Let's see if I can keep this going right. All right. So, verse 16 says, and while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicureans and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him, some of them saying, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. Ironically, how many gods did they have? They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Keep that in mind. Every time you turn around, they start talking about resurrection. Some trouble starts happening. And then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus. Well, I ain't got there yet. All right. And so, to the Areopagus. Let's see. What is this about? To the Areopagus, where they said to this, and where they said to him, may we know that this teaching is that you are presenting. You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would all like to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Talk about babblers. Anyway, so he comes to Athens, and here he is. This is the Areopagus. On this is basically it's a big rock with all the different idol temples and everything. Specifically, you see here, what is this? This is not Nashville. The Parthenon, okay? The Parthenon was god to Athena, all right? There are multiple temples all on this rock. Everywhere you look, there's Athena. This is from the other side. And so here is all this taking place on this big rock where they worship all these different gods. This Paul Paul is sitting, actually from down here is what they call the marketplace. And that's where he spends most of his time, is down here. And he looks up, and this is what the city of Athens sees. All of this. Over here, you can't really see it, is a place called Mars Hill. All right? And so here he is. He sees all these things, and then he comes, and this here is Mars Hill, or what is known as, what is it called? It's called something else in Greek. I forgot to write down the word. Somebody got it? Nope. All right. So then we comes to this, and this is right there, just kind of halfway down the mountain. It's still on the side of the mountain. And as we look at it here, this place up here is where not the Areopagus. I'll get it for you. But anyway, it's Mars Hill, which means Ares Hill, or the place where a god of war, Ares, hangs out, or started a war from. But this is the place where all the philosophers, and previous to this time, back during Athenian time, during the Grecian times, this was the place where all the major decisions were made. This is where the high court met and everything was decided. Once the Romans took over, it was kind of relegated to a secondary thing. Now they can talk and they decide religious matters, political matters, philosophical matters, but they don't deal with the law. For the law, you have to go through a Roman court system and deal with it. But this is where all the great thinkers sat and thought and had conversations with each other, just like he said. They would sit there and they would ponder and discuss the different religions or philosophies of the day to decide who was more valid and what was going on. So all this took place at what we call Mars Hill. This is Sue. She's right next to a plaque, and that plaque, written in Greek, is the speech that sermon that Paul preaches to them there. Which brings us to the next thing. Let's see if I can get this right. The Areopagus, okay, I got the Acropolis is the other one. The rock is called the Acropolis. This is the Areopagus. Thank you. That's right. Me and my Greek are not very good.
Philosophers. He already visited Philippi, Thessalonica, Berea, and then he came to Athens. Here he met the philosophers in the Agora, the marketplace, which is beneath Mars Hill. And he gave them an amazing speech. In English, "Ye men of Athens, I see you are very religious. As I was observing the objects of your worship, I even found an altar dedicated to the unknown God." I would like to tell you a little bit of this speech in the prototype, in the Greek language. And right there, it's written in Greek for everybody who comes to our country to see that what Paul said is true. Because he stood up here, archaeology proves it, and here we are from every nation, we are here to see when Paul brought the message of the gospel of Christ. Are you ready to hear in Greek? Άνδρες Αθηναίοι, ως δισημαδενεστέρους ημάς θεωρώ, διερχόμενος γάρ και αναθεωρών τα σεβάσματα ημών, εύρων και βωμό, ενώ επεγέγραπτο αγνώστο Θεό. The inscription in the Greek language to the unknown God was agnosto Theo. Paul used that opportunity to say, the God whom you worship without knowing, this is the God I came to proclaim to you. God does not dwell in temples made with human hands. And he pointed to the Parthenon right there. Because they believe that God dwells inside the temple of Parthenon. But God is everywhere. If we search, we will find him. Thank you.
forgot to introduce who that is. You know who that is? Dino Russo. He's one, and we supported here for several years or whatever. He's a missionary, and actually he's from Athens. He lives in Athens, and he's works with the church there in Athens. And we were fortunate to be there on the Lord's Day, and fortunate enough for him to take us on these and show us these places. Anyway, what he has done is he has read to us and told us the first part of that sermon, and how the God who made the world and everything in it, in the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he's not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gave everyone life, breath, and everything else. And from one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times and histories and the boundaries of their lands. And he goes on, and then he says, therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, all these things that we saw, that golden Athena and all the things they worshipped. Instead, stone, or an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the men he has appointed, and he's given proof to this to everyone by raising him from the dead. And when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, let me look here. Yep. And when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, we want to hear you again on this subject. And at that time, Paul left the council. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. Among them was Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, which is the meeting, the council, or whatever on that hill, which was called the Areopagus too. Also, a woman named Damaris and a number of others. All right. What we're looking at here is standing on Mars Hill, looking down into the valley. I told you that down in the valley, and he mentioned down below was the marketplace where Paul was at. This is the marketplace. It's called the Agora. Huh? Yeah, the Agora, or Agora, Agora. I don't know how you say it in Greek, but that's what it is. Did he? Okay. That's what it's called. What that means is marketplace, but it's not, doesn't mean grocery store. It means open air marketplace. It's a place where you go to do business. So if you want to barter and trade and buy things, you do that. You want to discuss religions and different things and worship your gods, you go there. If you want to have political conversations and hearings with courts and everything, you do that here. Over to the right, I'll show you a close-up in just a second. See, over to the left is a temple for worship. Over to the right is a place that is, it's called a basilica, which means nothing more than a long oblong building with a lot of columns on it where a royal court meets. Nowadays, sometimes a church meets there in Catholicism. But that's what a basilica is. All right? There's your temple. In the middle was the main marketplace where they did all the shops were and people did things and met and interacted with each other. All your social life and political life and everything took place here. And then over here is where the government actually ruled and met and debated and did the things that they needed to do. All this is at the foot of the Areopagus.
Scott, is this the Greek government or the Roman government?
Actually, it's both. The Greek government, Rome, just like in Jerusalem, allowed a certain amount of autonomy to all of their cities and all their people. So this would be where the city of Athens ruled from, but there's always the iron fist right next to them to make sure everything stays in line. So they're right there too. Okay? This here, yeah.
Are they, like, what is that area now? Is it just
That's desolate. It's ruins. Yeah, you see it right there. It's actually people are walking around. It's the ruins of the Agora, as I call it in English. Well, not 2,000 years, no. But you can see, and you'll see all those stones and stuff that you see right in there. Those are the walls of the buildings and such. Right in here, these are walls and see, that's part of the columns that used to be there. This used to be a covered marketplace right there. So this is the ruins of it. As he went on, we read of how he established the church, and some believed him and some didn't. It didn't sound like a strong following. But what I want to point out is the church in Athens still exists today. It's here. Rousseau works with the church there. They have a Greek congregation. They have an English congregation. They have I don't remember which Middle Eastern language it is, congregation, and they have Afghan congregation. They have multiple congregations meeting all day long on the Lord's Day in different languages. We went there and dropped in, and this was the Afghan meeting of the church. Of course, we understood zero. I don't understand enough Spanish hardly to get along, let alone all this other. But this is the church there. It is still taking place there today. At the end of chapter 18, going over to chapter 19, and it says, while Apollos was at Corinth, nope, wrong one, chapter 18. After this, Paul left Athens and went to Corinth. Wanted to show you this. We already showed you up here the north. This is the south. Right here is, I'm about to die. This fell off. I lost my power. Okay. I'm sorry for being so disorganized today. I really am. So here is Athens over here, and basically Corinth is right here, where this crossroad is. He's going to make this journey to come to right here. One thing I wanted to point out about this area right here is Achaia, however you say it. And this is the Peloponnese, this peninsula out here. On this peninsula, there is a lot of Greek civilization going on or whatever. Corinth is here, Athens is here. Right over here is Olympia, where the Olympics started, and all these different things are all around here. We'll get into it a little bit more here in a second. So he finds that he leaves Athens and he starts traveling. He starts traveling around beside the sea, the Gulf of Saronian Gulf, and comes down, which is this right here. So he comes right along this over here to this point here. This here is a picture taken from above Corinth, on what they call the Acrocorinth, which was a fortress-type place, and looking back toward this place where the isthmus where they crossed. Here's that Saronic Gulf. This is the Corinthian Gulf. All these Greek names, I can't keep up. This is what they call the isthmus. As they travel along, they come across the Corinthian Isthmus. Anybody know what an isthmus is? What? Connecting two large sections of land. That's what it literally is a small section between these two seas. It's also between these two big territories or land masses. All right? And so it connects Achaia and the Peloponnese. This is right at the isthmus. What they have done today, there's a canal. There was not a canal then. Just like in Panama, there was the Isthmus of Panama. What did they do to it? They put a canal so they get from one body of water to the other. That's exactly what is taking place here. In their time, they did not have this ditch cut. It's only a couple miles long. They didn't have it cut. Instead, they had what they call a diolkos. Diolkos. This was basically a stone tramway that was set on the ground, and they would pull the ship up to one side, and then they would use muscle power, and they would drag it on these tracks. The ship would come up on the tracks, just like on on our trailers for our boats. The sides, it would sit up on that, except it would be all the way across to the other sea, and then they would drag it all the way across, and then put it back in the water there. Saved them days of traveling all the way around. It's kind of like nobody likes to go all the way around South America to get over to the Pacific Ocean. They'd rather go through the middle. Well, today they have the same situation. They have boats and ships that go through here, connect the two. Okay? Of course, ships are a lot faster today, so it's not as critical as it was in their day, you know. So this is the isthmus, and the stone tramway was put in there. This is a critical route because over here is Ephesus, and basically all traffic came from Syria, which is Palestine, Israel and all that, came over to Ephesus. They came, and then they went right through here and across and out here, and they went over to Rome. So Rome is the main place. So this was the main transportation route to Rome. And so as soon as you cross that, within a couple miles, suddenly you're at ancient Corinth. All right. Where am I at? All right. Corinth was a dominant commercial center, different from Ephesus. We studied Ephesus. Ephesus was a major crossroads too, if you remember. It's land and sea. Most every population went through Ephesus. But Ephesus was more of an upper class area, if you will, or whatever, business-wise. This is a major commercial center, bigger than Athens. Athens at this time is dwindled down in power and prestige. Corinth is more powerful and more recognized than Athens was. And we find that because of all the commercial traffic that would go through here. But with commercial traffic, you get a rough life. You know, when you think of your seaports and your cities and your sailors and all that, you know, of old, that's what you're dealing with here. Okay? You got 2 seaports, you got land routes, you got all these things going on. So here we have the crossroads from north to south, from Greece to the southern part of Greece, where most of the happening stuff was at this time. Coming this way. And in addition to that, you had the crossroads going from Rome over this way, coming through here as it went to the rest of the empire. Asia, Syria, everywhere. You have 2 seaports, seaport here and seaport here. Lechion is this one here. It's a major shipping port. This is where your shipbuilding was taking place. They had a navy stationed there. Over here was a shipping center and a gateway to the east. Everything east of there went that way. So we have 2, and that's a Cenchrea. There's the seaport there. This is an overhead of the area there. Not much really to see there. But when the first things that you see when you come to town is you see the temple to Apollo. Okay, so the whole center there, that's their main thing. The population was about 100,000 people, all races, all nationalities. They had a large agora, or however you said it, which is marketplace. It does the exact same thing in Corinth. This is the road that comes in from Athens. And these are shops along the way. This is part of the agora. Those are shops. What's left of them, you were asking. This is what they look like a little closer up. This is the actual street, the marketplace that takes place in this. All down the sides are shops and various things. Up here is a bath that we'll look at in a second. This is one of the major roads. This is looking down that road, and up in the back, I mentioned the Acrocorinth. There's a fortress on top of this, which kind of provides a place of fortification for the military to stay out. But it is also the temple up there to Aphrodite. Guess what Aphrodite is known for? Prostitution. There is over 1,000 prostitutes working up there. You talk about a seaport town? They go, and if you've ever seen the road that goes up there, that's a long hike. but they had 1,000 prostitutes, so it was a very busy center when it comes to that. The 2 roads to the seaport. This is the part of the Agora, and the other road is, and there's the Apollo. There's the other, this here, let me back up. Okay, this is on the west side city. The other I showed you is on this side, is this one here, part of the Agora. And then on the south side, this is what, or the north side, I get backwards. North is up toward the sea. This is on the north side, and this is another part of the Agora that's called the North Marketplace, or the Maselu, which means meat market. Why is that relevant? Here's the Apollo, the temple to Apollo. Do what? Sacrifice of meat goes here, and then it goes down here for sale at the meat market. Guess what the book of Corinthians talks about? That situation. There it is. In addition to that, it's a this is another street to the sea. It's also famous for being right in the center of what they call the Pan-Hellenic Games. Do you know what that is? Do what? The Olympics. The Olympics were, I showed you over on the one side of the peninsula. They happened on year 4. On year 2, right across the water, the Corinthian thing, and on the other side of the isthmus at Delphi was the Pythian Games. They happened in year 2. Right south of Corinth, a couple miles, is the Nemean Games, which happened in years 2 and 4. The first games, Olympics, are to Zeus. The ones at Delphi are to Apollo. The ones just south are to Zeus. And then also in years 2 and 4, right there as you cross the isthmus is the Isthmian Games, and they're in years 2 and 4, and they're dedicated to Poseidon. This is the location of them right there. There are remnants of the things we didn't go in, but there are remnants of the event and where they took place. Things took place right here. In addition to that, it had a well-known fountain, and this fountain was a bathhouse. Basically, the Romans were big on bathhouses, public bathhouses where people could come and whatever. There was a well-known spring that fed out and came right into this particular bathhouse, and they would have a pool there for people to dip in and to take a bath and to sit and relax, kind of like going to a spa or area or whatever. Does anybody know what that is? Somebody take a guess. What? It's in the bathhouse or next to it. What? It is. That's your public restrooms. Remember here a few weeks ago, Corey was talking about public restrooms and how open or how whatever, I said, oh, they are. There it is. Stall 1, stall 2, stall 3. You just line up. And you see this everywhere. We've got pictures of this in Rome, pictures of this here, pictures in Ephesus, everywhere. That's the way it was done in the Roman times. That's the public restroom. I thought I'd throw that in since he had brought it out. I don't know what we were studying Esther, and I don't remember why it was brought out in that, but I'd say so. I'd say so. Anyway. It was also a major religious center. There were many gods. This is one to Apollos. Apollos was the son of Zeus, one of the sons of Zeus, the primary one. This here is on top of this is the temple to Aphrodite that we already showed you and talked about. So it's right behind the town, right there at the town. In addition to that, there was a long string right along the edge of one of the streets on the East Street, if they would call it, around the square, if you want to call it that. And there was multiple temples to multiple deities all lined up there, and they were in ruins as we speak, along there. In addition to this, there was the political center. At the political center, they had what was called the rostra, or the bema, as is referred to in the New Testament. It's basically a place where public hearings took place. You can't see it too well, maybe I can. But basically, it's a long wall and with a portico or whatever in the middle, and a judgment seat and a lectern where you have conversations and you have public hearings and things right there. This is it. The wall still remains. Right here is the lectern. And in the background, little Aphrodite keeping an eye on what's going on here. This would have been something when Paul arrived in town. This is something that's similar to what he would have been looking at. Here's that wall we was just looking at where they meet. Here's the agora here, back down here. Here's your meat market. Here's the temple to Apollo. Here's all these other temples. Here's the theaters, meetings, and the roads to the sea went this way. There's two of them went there, and this one here came and also comes this way across the isthmus and over by the games. So this is what Paul would have been looking at when he went there. I think I'm going to stop right there. It's about quarter till. Next week, we're going to start with Acts chapter 18, starting with verse 2 or 1. And we're going to take a look at exactly what he did when he went there and look at a few more things of what he was seeing and dealing with and where he was involved in some of these things. We will also take a look then as he leaves there. He leaves them behind in the second missionary journey. He goes back to Syria. And he says, I'm coming back. And on his way back, he stops and stays at Ephesus. And while he's at Ephesus, he's going to write the letter to Corinth. And so we're going to kind of look at all that and how that letter to Corinth, as he's writing back to these people that we're just looking at, who this city is and what it's all about, that he writes to the church there. So we're going to start with him establishing the church and then talking about him as he writes his letter to them, which we call 1 Corinthians. All right, any other thoughts or questions?
Is Greece always so arid? I mean, it's not going to help much rain except a few trees.
Yeah, it's kind of well, that's why olive trees and, they're big on wine and those kind of things, because those are produces that require rain at certain times but not at others. So they have their seasons and whatever. Beyond that, I don't know. Zach could probably speak to it better. We ran into him over there. Of course, he's a little far. He's on an island, a little out for there, but he's been around there more. So a lot of that whole territory is kind of that way, isn't it, Zach? Oh, yeah. That's everywhere we went. That's kind of what we found was the trees. You don't see oak trees and things like we have here that are idea of a lot of water and a lot of rain. You have different kinds of trees, more that are the dry type of trees.
I've read about how they did some of their agriculture with their grapevines and olive trees. They would, we have it around here, layered stones, about 8 feet.
Yeah.
They would cover the whole ground with that. And of course, where they were going, the water could filter down too. But it kept it act like mulch, where it didn't allow it to dry up right away. And they would lift those up every year and put sticks and leaves and stuff under there
Okay.
to lay them back down.
Well, there's a lot of rock, so everything sits on top. And you see a lot of it cut and terraced. You saw how, in Athens, the big rock. You see a big rock here. There's rock everywhere. And so you see a lot of that. And like you said, if you terrace it, the water runs and waters all of it when you got too much and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a lot like that. Matter of fact, I had a picture, and I didn't put it in here. Actually, it's from the top of that, looking down, and you can see the farmlands and how the different rows of olives and different things are growing down there, and it's very brown and white, brown and white, brown and green, brown and green, brown and green, you know. So it's kind of that way. Answer your question. All right, next week we'll take it from there. Thank you.